Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Single best idea. Thank you so much for listening. Getting some nice feedback on this. The goal here is a short, focused 2 ideas on what we observed across all of the 3 hours of Bloomberg Surveillance today. And the basic idea is we know you're busy with your many podcasts, and the goal here is a 6-minute, short, tight focus of 2 insights from our many wonderful guests. Today's very eclectic. We start out in economics, and then we get to the glory of American technology. In economics, it's simple. There was a wall of economic data at 8:30, and we dissected that with Jeffrey Cleveland of Payton and Rigel. And what's so important here is he's got a huge West Coast bias. He's away from those 3 zip codes of Manhattan. He's very aware of the productivity of America and some of the boom economies that maybe the Northeast is not seeing. What we saw today was a dash of that continued boom economy, and we really saw that with a weekly claims statistic that was better than good. We had retail sales as well in PPI. Let us listen to Jeff Cleveland.
I don't see the case for rate cuts in this data. I mean, just in order of importance for what I'm looking at initial claims dropping back below 210,000 in the latest week. I mean, exceptionally low layoff activity. So that's the sign of, I think, a still solid labor market. And then if you go next to PPI, it definitely came in hotter than we expected. We already penciled in a 0.3 core PCE increase for February, so for later this month. But nothing there that I think, if I'm a policymaker sitting around Washington next week, I'm going to be really confident that we've done enough.
Jeffrey Cleveland there on the economic data of the day. And, we'll see what happens here in the coming days as we go towards the March 20 Fed meeting. Look for the Bloomberg Surveillance coverage. The Fed decides. Of course, we'll do that on March 20th. Today was an extraordinary day. I don't know what to say other than the team got the best guests that we could have given a space flight or an attempt of a space flight. Let us remind ourselves that Elon Musk has tried to put 2 of a ginormous rocket up into the air, and he has failed gloriously twice. It's amazing to see actual rocketry failure as we've witnessed over the recent months as well. So there was some real tension in the air during the show today, and we had the great privilege of, would this huge rocket destined to go to the moon and to Mars, dramatically larger than any of our memories of the 1960s and early 1970s, could it possibly succeed? And what we saw was a very successful launch today. Keith Cowing is an astrobiologist. He's someone with NASA, but also on the edges of NASA. He's been somewhat critical of NASA as well. He's done all sorts of other projects in manned and unmanned American space. Here's Keith Cowing on the moment at hand.
And now what you're seeing, I mean, this is, I don't want to get too flag waving, but this is an American rocket. 100% American based on everything we've learned in the past half century. And this thing is just taken off like a 1950s science fiction rocket.
The success of Elon Musk today, and to remind ourselves that this huge rocket took off from Texas, and the tension was around just getting off the ground, the initial thrust in that, and the scope and size of bottom end of the rocket, the flames coming out, dramatically larger than anything of our memories of Saturn V and Apollo 11 and on to Apollo 16. And so we talked to Keith Cowing about the path forward here, the success for Mr. Musk.
I mean, this is indeed how you do it. And this is how you do it multiple times. And the first place we're going to go is the moon. And once we figure that out, the next place they're going to go to Mars. And Elon's going to go there whether or not NASA writes him a check. So I just think it's time to buckle up and enjoy the ride.
He absolutely nailed it. I was sitting in our Interactive Broker studios, and I was looking over at the 10, 12 screens that we've got there. And the single emotion I had, it's not that it was out of Flash Gordon, which was before my time, but the rocketry was so foreign. I remember the big Soviet rockets of years ago, and they were bigger and more lumpier, if you will, less fragile than Saturn V rockets, and this was quantum leaps larger than the Soviet boosters of the 60s and the 70s, and it did look out of a science fiction movie from the 1950s. We need to thank Ed Ludlow in San Francisco with Bloomberg Technology for some real important analysis there, along with Keith Cowing. Thank you so much for your initial interest here in this 6-minute effort. Can't say enough about it. We say thank you to you worldwide on Apple CarPlay. It's safer, it's better, it's a great way to listen to the show. And we are humbled by what we're seeing with YouTube worldwide. You go to YouTube, you search Bloomberg Podcasts. We thank all of you across America for your attention.